fresh morning, and there's a whole new list and a whole new bunch of stuff that we've got to discuss, so let's get right to it. Second day of the mega conglomeration of IRF 2015, and maybe we should start with an interesting stat. This one, for instance, did you know that more than 1 billion people traveled in 2013, that's 2 years back, and they spent over $1,100 billion just while traveling internationally? That's a huge number. Just put it in context with what's happening with all our recently opened international airports, both in Delhi and in Mumbai. They've got great ambiance going. There's a whole slew of stores, whether it's food or entertainment or lifestyle. There's a whole lot going on there. This is indeed the transit retail segment. So whether it's food, fashion, electronics, luxury goods, there's a lot on offer, and there's a lot in terms of revenue potential as well. That's one opportunity in terms of travel. The other one that's coming up is with the upcoming railway transit systems. The Indian Railways, it is the heart of how India travels, and it's huge really in terms of potential. The metro that's coming up in a lot of the A cities now, as also along the prime highway locations. I think most retailers are now planning to scale up. They want a presence on these transit locations, and they want to sort of tap into the revenue potential over there. So that's what our first session this morning is about. You will hear from leading brands and retailers in terms of how to better leverage this opportunity and what this could mean for many retailers in terms of future revenue potential. So without further ado, let me set forth the agenda for this morning. The first one on the list, opening new vistas in travel retail. It's called Retail on the Go. And this is, remember, a 6th continent with 1 billion consumers. That's the potential we're talking about. So here's the list of people who will be telling you their thoughts on ideas on how best to do it. May I invite on stage Atul Ahuja, Vice President Retail of Apollo Pharmacy; Gopalakrishnan Shankar, CEO of Reliance Footprint; Pankaj Ranjan, who's MD Retail Services for JLL; Sumit Soni, Brand Director for Premium Apparel for Raymond; Yashovardhan Gupta, Director and CEO Cross; and Zubin Kapoor, CEO of Bentel Associates.
Good morning, everybody. It's always a bit tough to start the first session because the audience is sparse, and we normally joke around whenever we have the first session saying that we will be the speakers and the audience both. But there are some, and we'll try to make it as engaging as possible for everybody. I think travel retail in India really started kicking off from the time the privatization of the airport started happening. And if you all recollect, we used to all rave about the airports that started with Hyderabad, progressively Bangalore, then Delhi, and then of course many other airports have come through. As we went along, of course, there are other travel options that have opened up. Things like, let's say, metro, DMRC in Delhi, other metro stations across the country. We have seen some bit of highway retailing as well. And however, having said that, India has always had travel retailing for a fairly long period of time. We started off with, in the audience, we have someone who has experience in A.H. Wheeler. We discovered it this morning. And A.H. Wheeler, of course, started ages back with railway retailing books. We used to all buy our books from A.H. Wheeler. So it has existed travel retailing, but I think in the modern format, the modern avatar, with the modern dynamics, and of course with the brands that we all want, it started coming in from the time that we had started the privatization of the airports. But before we really get into exploring each of the topics that I have, I would actually request each one of the co-panelists here to actually narrate their own experiences in travel retail in a couple of minutes, and then we'll take it up from there.
I'm an architect, so I'm not really a retailer, but what I can talk about is the great potential and possibility of that the railways and railway lines, which we see sort of growing around different cities and different tiers in India for consumers. I think these environments, what particularly interests me is how to do these centers around major stations that create diversity, mixed use. I think diversity in land use and population, we really have to think about that and understand what that means. And public and private sectors, when developing this heavy infrastructure, have to think about how to work together and how to work together quickly and efficiently to deliver successful commercial schemes. I think, with that, you have to start creating density around certain nodes. It's pointless to have 200 kilometers of railway line and think you can create dense pockets all the way along this new infrastructure. It's really about focusing on creating nodes, identifying the nodes that are most important in the city, and the only way you can do that is to look at the big picture, look at it regionally. And once you do that, you then create density around those nodes. And of course, retail works where there's people, yeah? So if there's office buildings, employment centers, that's when you start getting enough mass, to warrant consumers to move around these centers and start spending and experiencing space. People living around these centers, and they have to be people from diverse, spectrums of society. I mean, that's the great thing with retail, I think, in India. The potential is, it's not a CEO or a director, perhaps, that uses this mode of transport. It's all of India, and that's a great potential. But with it, we have to think about the mix. Just as we think about the mix of retail offer, we have to think about, the type of offer we're creating in terms of the retail, and what that means to the commuter who's coming and arriving at these stations. So that's kind of what interests me.
Thanks. Just a quick introduction. I represent Jones Lang JLL. We are a retail services company. We've been associated with all forms of travel retail, whether it's airports, the metro projects, as well as the highway projects per se, and the railways as well, both as principal advisors on their divestment processes, and then also strategizing and helping them get tenants as well. What our experience has been in travel retail, and if I'll take up each three aspects of the really three modules where travel retail functions, is, for example, the airports. It has a huge amount of opportunity. I don't know if you've seen this. There's a billboard in Delhi which said the Delhi airport is used by more people than it's a population of Sweden. So obviously, we all know that in India we don't have a challenge of population, which is enough. But we also now have a discerning population as well, who are well connected to what's happening globally. They know what's the trends. They travel abroad because it's cheaper to travel from Delhi to Bangalore than it's cheaper to travel to Delhi to Dubai or Delhi to Bangkok for that matter than go to Delhi to Cochin for that matter for a holiday. So these people are exposed to what's happening internationally. Unfortunately, we've not been able to give them the same level of experience yet. And I can't say that's blame the operators, whether it's the government or whether it's the retailer. I think it's the ecosystem is yet to mature and develop to the next level. And then similar thing when we look at the metro corridors where retail has developed, and probably Delhi was always a forefront of it because really that's where although Calcutta had the metro for a long period of time, but really Delhi metro really changed the landscape of how the society of India changes with the new transportation system comes in. And it's opened up really for a lot of people to actually start using metros and giving up their cars or other forms of public transport, and opened up a huge opportunity. But did we capitalize on the opportunity? Maybe. We did not. In some formats, we did capitalize the opportunity to decongest the roads, but did we capitalize on the ecosystem around it in terms of retailing, which you see in international cities? Not yet. I think because the metro company or the government which appointed looked at it as more of a contracting job, and they just wanted to focus on the core of running the metro and wanted to give it out to private people to run the developments which is around it, whether it's developing the stations or the real estate around it. So it's kind of been a bottleneck there when we're not seeing the full potential getting unlocked. Highways still a huge opportunity which has not been tapped into yet. We've not seen highway malls. We've not seen big motels coming up. It's been the old system of maybe probably the only pioneer we've seen who's been able to do something in that space is probably a McDonald's, and they went and put up these highway stores. You see it in the Mumbai-Pune Expressway. You see it in Jalandhar. You see it in Ludhiana on the outskirts where they've put up these stores. So except that, we've seen only some initial what I would say is movement to the right step, but has it been unlocked after about 10 years of privatization and opening of these opportunities? I don't think so. There's a huge opportunity which is still been waiting to be unlocked. And I think probably, Himanshu, we can debate and chat on that as we go by.
Hi everyone. So I represent Cross, and so we're phenomenally successful in travel retail. And part of what I wanted to share is this great new channel. The session is titled Travel Retail, the Sixth Continent. And for Indian entrepreneurs, businesses, companies, it really can be the sixth continent. And I wanted to share some of our successes. Cross, for instance, has been selling in over 35 airlines internationally on 4 continents. There are some very key advantages of travel retail which we can all sort of harness. The primary advantage is that it is a channel. It is not a geography. It is segmented by channel. So any Indian businesses, for example, desirous of a global footprint, can very easily contact 3 to 4 operators. You have Dufry, DFS, you have multiple global operators. And the moment you partner with them, you could be in, for instance, in over 100 countries. There are some difficulties on working with operators which we'll come to, but travel retail is a low-hanging fruit which Indian businesses can really benefit from. Secondly, it is instant global visibility. Who doesn't want global visibility? We have many panelists here who represent Indian brands, many outside. Indian brands are really trying to reach out. Instant global visibility can be achieved quite quickly within a time frame of 0 to 2 years via the travel retail channel. Thirdly, it does represent a great shopping environment. The average travel retail shopping environment is superior to the average mall shopping environment and really aids impulse purchases. Granted, a large part of this is supported by what we call the liquor, tobacco, cosmetic, confectionery, and accessories industry. But it's a very personal time. Individuals are with themselves. Most are traveling for work or to meet a relative. Most are traveling individually. So it's a great personal time, and I think our panel team members from Apollo can sort of talk about how they have used that to their advantage as well. But it's a great opportunity to get into the mind of the shopper and get him to buy something for himself or a gift. There are some disadvantages. I'll get into a bit of those. Because there are only a few operators, the margins tend to be high. Margins can be as much as 65, with incentives as much as 70%. And if you have some agents involved in the process, the brand may get as little as 25 to 30%. So it's a difficult channel, difficult to be profitable, but instant visibility and instant advantages. There are a lot of certification criteria as well. For example, with Cross, since we're selling on 30 airlines, we needed to get a CT-PAT registration, which is an anti-terrorism registration, which certifies that your products do not contain anthrax or some other contra brand. The labeling criteria for confectionery is even more stringent. So those trade barriers aside, it is a great channel, and I highly recommend it for brands desirous of a global footprint.
My experience as an operator in travel retail comes from our joint venture partners, Marks and Spencers. You know, Marks and Spencers in India are JV partners with Reliance, and there is one airport store that they run in Delhi. It does very, very well. You know, if I have to extrapolate from our experience in that store, certainly travel retail seems to be a very good opportunity, not just for the conventional categories, but also for fashion products. I mean, M&S obviously sells apparel and footwear. Quite surprisingly, you know, at least to me, they've got about 50 odd stores, but in terms of productivity, it gives the highest productivity in the whole chain. I mean, the size, of course, is not like any other large Marks and Spencer store, but it did surprise me that it beats the productivity in some of the really good malls that they already are present in. The operating costs, of course, are high in a typical airport retail, but it also turns out that the whole store is quite profitable. So while the cost may be high, it's also an opportunity because space is restricted. You tend to put your best merchandise, best collection in, and the store is doing extremely well. The driver, of course, is the traveling man, you know, I mean, who is very focused at that point of time, has the money, and unlike the national average, I mean, this store has its highest category contribution from men's. So he's obviously buying for himself, but ladies also does well, which means there is a lot of gifting element in it. Kids does very well, you know, although in terms of the number of travelers, it's a very small percentage. So it seems like for a male, you know, who has the affordability and who takes it at this point of time, an ability to be very focused in what he's buying, this seems like a very good opportunity. So not just high productivity, it's also profitable, and certainly drawing from this store seems to be a great opportunity. Like my colleague said, there are challenges in operations, but certainly nothing that stymies the overall opportunity of the business itself. I think I'll stop here and give it to my colleague here.
Hi, good morning. My name is Atul Ahuja, and I represent India's largest pharmacy chain, which is Apollo Pharmacy. I'm sure you guys would be wondering as to why you need a pharmacy in an airport. Why you would want to pick up a medicine before boarding a flight, whether it's a leisure trip or a business trip. Interestingly, we'll talk about it during the sessions, how we make this story interesting even at the airports also. I think the point that I want to add now, after all my 5 panelists mentioned about it, I think the conversation was more limited to the airport. For us, when you look at travel retail for us, we encompass travel and tourism together. And when we say travel, airport is just one of the component of it. And as you can see from the numbers, we have got 2,200 outlets. Out of that, airport would contribute to close to about 10 or 15 outlets. Whereas the bigger chunk that we are looking from now is the opportunity on the railway side. The government is about to revamp close to about 6,000 railway stations. That's an opportunity. In fact, that's one opportunity which I dealt with my first job way back in 1996 when I used to sell books on the railway bookstalls. We used to work with a company called AH Wheelers, and probably when you talk of travel retail, that was a company that pioneered travel retail before 1947. So I think that's another big opportunity that we are looking at, which we want to harness. Second, when we look at travel, it is all about rapid transport system within the cities also. We have understood the concept as to how the traffic flows within the city, and we know what are the metro stations, like I come from Delhi, so we know what are the metro stations in the suburbs where the population comes at the end of the day. How they shop during the end of the day, how they shop during the start of the day. So I think this is another big opportunity which I believe can be looked at. Third is always on, of course, on the highways. I don't know how many kilometers, but little I know about 100,000 kilometers of highways that we have. Pharmacy may not be an apt example for highway retail, but the kind of usage that we see, people moving in their own cars, own conveyances, luxury travel, I think that's another big opportunity. Last point that I just want to say and leave it out here for the time being is, when we say travel, we also look at tourism as part and parcel of the travel retail. So just to give you an example from the world I come from, for us, pharmacy in Haridwar during a Kumbh Mela was also a part of a travel retail. And most probably next year in Jan we are going to do it. So these are the elements that we believe are the travel retail, and I think we'll be talking about it in the session further.
Thank you so much, Atul. I think one of the things that we have all noticed when we travel, whether it is through railway stations, airports, etc., is that the size of the store, the product mix, and the pricing, the assortment and the pricing and the design seems to be quite different from the overall look, feel may be the same. But if you go through the design, be it size, how the layout is done, which products are put up for display, and at what pricing, that seems to be quite different from what we see for the same brands on the high street. maybe starting with you, Atul, do you make any changes to your assortment mix or pricing or display principles at these destinations?
I think on the pricing side, we also work under a MRP regime, so more or less we are on the same side. But I think we do a lot of innovation on the assortment mix. Because I was telling you that you won't want to buy a medicine which is a prescription medicines which you buy on a prescription of a doctor. And ideally we don't even stock it in our stores in the airport. I think the way we utilize that opportunity is more on developing an assortment mix which is around wellness. So the profile of the customer who visits us at the airport is typically 35 plus, disposable income of more than 50,000 rupees, widely traveled, have good time at that point of time. So we use that opportunity in doing a product mix which hovers around wellness, which is about nutraceuticals, supplement, functional food, and everything that goes about health. And the way we do this opportunity is by training our staff differently out there. Because that's a place where the customer has a time, of course the money, and we use that time in starting a dialogue and a conversation with him. And that's how we train our staff to address that opportunity. The net outcome of that is that our average bill value in typical these kinds of outlets is at least 3 times what our average bill value is in the store outlets.
Shankar, what has your experience been in this area?
Yeah, again, from what I've picked up, the size of the store is small and the cost of running it is high. So, it kind of puts pressure on you to put your best merchandise out. I mean, the customer is also well off, widely traveled, very contemporary. So, in fact, it's a good place for the first introduction of your season's products. I mean, the best and the first ones there. And it is also very good for the season's requirements. If it's knitwear, and winter in Delhi, it's the right place. I mean, people have the time, and this is something which would take him a little more time buying from elsewhere, whereas in an airport, very concentrated, you could buy. Good place to put high-value products, which are typical gifting products. So certainly, like he said, average bill value in this store is much more than the country average. So it's a place for your best products, best collection, high-margin ones. It's also, I mean, one typicality about an airport store is the entire store is open. The entire store is a window. So it's a huge opportunity to advertise your entire store. So you put your best products. So no wonder both productivity and margins in this place are much better than the rest of the country.
Thank you, Shankar. Yash, you must be having lots to say on this.
Yeah, in fact, when Shankar was mentioning about the best product, I'll let the audience in on a trade secret. Whenever we fly any international airline, Emirates, Singapore, if you browse through the in-flight catalog, those SKUs are the best-selling SKUs of those companies. For example, for Swarovski, for Montblanc, those SKUs are literally the highest grossing SKUs. And Shankar mentioned a very important point, because travel retail is such an expensive channel. Your cost per square feet is very high. So for landside travel retail, companies are focused on maximizing their return on a per square feet basis, limited SKUs. Importantly, the dwell time, the customer dwell time is very less. So increasingly brands are becoming very self-serve in nature. For instance, in Cross, our entire focus is how do we remove barriers to purchase and become seamless and absolutely self-serve in nature, that you are running for your flight, you can just pick up a leather wallet or a pen and catch your flight. So there are certain advantages, but yes, the assortment available on airlines, on air travel retail, as well as landside is among the best. But there are various things that we can do with regard to not only selling, but also packaging. Because you have to package it very nicely, it must be very attractive, you're just passing by, you have to harness the limited window that the consumer has to think about it. Once he enters and he's in his own space, you can take advantage of the personal nature of the environment. But a lot is about harnessing and removing the barriers and becoming truly self-serve in nature.
Thank you so much. Pankaj, coming to you, can you throw some light in terms of let's say the travel, such locations, be it airports or railway stations? If you were the advisor or you're taken up the mandate, what would you do in terms of advising them on, let's say, the brand mix, the category mix, the layouting, the area apportioning, etc., which would be different from what you do, for example, for mall, a regular mall, yeah?
So what we've seen typically and experienced on the ground is obviously the first main frontline driver in travel retail is always been and will always be the F&B business. And that's really the largest chunk of the spend which the customer is doing, because particularly with the advent of low-cost airlines as well, so there's a lot of proportion of people who want to pick up something and go, and typically the maximum amount of travel happens either in the morning or a late evening, so there is an opportunity for people because they've not probably got food at home, they can just pick up something and grab and go. And that's where the smartness of the F&B retailer comes in, is what can he serve which is fresh, which is absolutely it's not messy, and it can be served very, very quickly, and it appetizing as well. And the customer is not looking for a dine-in experience to sit there and spend half an hour, 45 minutes, and he's well served. He just wants to pick it up, wants something edible, which is nice, clean, healthy, and walk away. And that's where we find there's a gap in the market, which we see typically then, and the experience on the ground as well, is we're trying to give him the same stuff which is available in a shopping mall for that matter. The food concept is exactly the same. He needs to probably use cutlery for it. I mean, for example, there is a sambar which is being served in a bowl, which is probably the guy's balancing it when he's going to the table. He's got 20 minutes and it spills over and the table is in a mess. There's nobody cleaning it up. There's small things which is not being done correctly. So when we look at it, we look at retailers very differently and saying who can fill up that category and serve. Secondly, we try and see if there is no entry barriers. We've seen this in experience, one of our retailer clients who's looking at space and putting up a quick serve bar in the inside one of the international terminals, and he said the only reason it was not viable for him because the airport had done an exclusive tie-up with one beverage company. And he says, why should I be restricted to sell only that beverage? And I may not get great margins because obviously when you have a tie-up with one person, I cannot do that. So you could only get one kind of beer in that entire place when probably there are about 60 kinds of beers available. So I think just in the hoard of the fact that to maximize revenue in the short run by the developer community or who develop the operators, they tend to do restrictive practices which do not aid the spending pattern. So I may not say X beer and say, forget it, I don't want to drink it, it's not available. So you're losing out a large customer base as well. So when we look at this, we plan very carefully to do that. And when after the F&B retail, which is the second one, is what rightly said, is something like accessories, gifting. If you walk to the stores in the airport, and if you see the Delhi airport, for example, none of the stores have a glass panel or a window which is actually barricading for the customer to get in. Typically when you go into a shopping mall, there is a demarcation for the store and there's one entry door. But these are like kind of seamless stores. So the merchandising has to be done in such a way that the product is displayed or the customer does not feel it takes him time to even interact and go beyond that wall. In the glass wall. So the product has to be probably small because everybody's checked in the baggage, so it has to be very small. It doesn't need trial. You can just pick up and go, and it is something which is very, very standard, or it is customized for the travel which he's doing. So we find there's a whole lot of people we like to do which is travel related retail. You want to pick up a gift, you want to pick up something which is like a lock for your bag, you forgot last minute that you're wearing a shirt and you forgot to pick up the cufflinks, you want to pick up a tie. So there's small of these things which people will want. So when we plan, it is very different from there. So there are a lot of the categories which get eliminated, and electronics, the bulky electronics absolutely get eliminated. And Himanshu, you've seen in your own last avatar as from mobile perspective as well. So you have to pick up a lot more accessories than the product itself. So those kind of elements which we keep in mind when we do something like the airports and the others. But when we do something like the metro stations, it's a whole lot of things. It also becomes the benchmark in saying, For example, we think the biggest opportunity to do in metro stations is to do grocery retail, the basic grocery retail, because a lot of people don't have time when they're going back home from their work. They can pick up the basic groceries as well and walk out. So there is a completely different mindset which has to be done to do that. Banking and financial services, that's a better time product. ATMs, we need to be put in there. Those kind of information things which can be put in, apart from the F&B, which is anyways a given. So these kind of things which have to be planned very, very well accordingly, and very different from a shopping mall.
And if I may add, mobile recharge stations, because that's, yeah. Okay, coming back to Zubin, of course, you were labeled as Kapoor, but with your surname Cooper, I guess there is some Indian linkage. Coming back to with your experience being in the international markets more than the market here, what are those elements that you see in some of the best travel retailing internationally that you feel is not yet in India and which you think India should adopt? It can be railway stations, airports, doesn't matter. But what are those things which can be taken and brought to India?
No, I think the potential and the opportunity in India is huge, and I think having gone to a lot of these conferences over the years and heard speakers, there's so much talk about opportunity and potential. But I think India is very much at the apex of it now, and I think it's a great and very exciting time for India, and that's why I chose to come here. I think Bentel Architects, of which I'm pleased to be a part of, is very good at looking at those opportunities, and the opportunities we're both beginning to talk about. It's interesting that, you know, I can look at it from a big global level in terms of planning, and you guys are thinking about sales and where you put your apparel and what sort of people you're getting in and out. But what really affects and influences that is good planning and good design. And I think, going back to your question, in Europe what we're beginning to see is, you know, we've challenged the traditional box. You know, the retail box, you know, of an air-conditioned internal mall is something that the Americans did in the 50s and 60s post-war. And we're still trying to do that. And, you know, I think the challenge in Europe certainly is to how to open these things, take the roof off and integrate retail more carefully, knit it well with these TOD developments, employment centers, an offer of different type of residential offers as well. And all these drivers essentially mean more sales. And Pankaj, it's interesting you talking about the mix. The mix is very important. You know, some retailers just might not do well in a TOD development. Community services are fundamental, you know, the things you were talking about. And, you know, that mix, getting that mix right is also, you know, very dependent on a successful, vibrant mixed-use development. And I often go back to South Bombay. I mean, my family were born in South Bombay. Okay, a lot of it is what the British left behind, but we can learn from the good things they left behind. And a lot of that is open streets, public spaces, big parks, the Medan, boulevards, places where people can still walk safely around major stations, you know, within kilometers of each other. And I think we can learn a lot from that sort of model. All we have to do is take the principles of good urban design and densify it around predominant sort of infrastructure points and create nodes, vibrant nodes, and then all sorts of things are possible on a retail level. And everyone's a winner with the footfall, the natural footfall we get from these centers.
On a lighter note, you can probably start with Khusro Bagh. It's a sprawling,
yes,
sprawling
Khusro Bagh. There are a few Parsi families in Khusro Bagh.
Yeah. Yes, you wanted to add something.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about when we talked about the assortment. We are choosing the high value assortment, though that is one way of looking at what we choose. But the another way and more interesting way is getting into the mind of the Indian consumer. And the Indian consumer shopping habits are very different, say on departure, on arrival, with international airports, with domestic airports. And Zubin also sort of touched about this topic about learning a bit from Europe. For instance, the Indian consumer, when he's sort of arriving at an Indian airport internationally, he just wants to pick up 2 bottles of Black Label and be on his way. But while he's departing, there are great opportunities. He's looking for maybe a snack, some reading material, some personal essentials such as a neck pillow, some gifts, maybe a bottle of liquor. So an interesting way also is to really get into the mind of the Indian consumer, which changes by time, by airport, by destination, and that can be quite an interesting way to cater your assortment.
Another slightly unrelated topic, and maybe whoever wants to take this can take this, is that we have seen quite a lot of technology innovations going on in the airports specifically. So we have seen these video shopping walls. We saw them internationally many years back. It's come to India in certain airports where you can actually select the SKUs, look at the QR code, shop from there, and so on and so forth, without actually there being any physical products there. We've also seen many of the airports in the last 4 or 5 years, kiosks coming up for multiple categories beyond just soft drinks that we used to see, and so on and so forth. Anything that you think for your category or otherwise that would be relevant from technological innovations coming into travel retail? Anybody wants to take that?
Give 1 or 2 examples which work very well. For example, Tesco did a great job in South Korea in the tube stations. You know, these video walls which depicted merchandising pretty much the same way that you would find it in the shops. All the products had QR codes. I mean, South Korea allegedly, you know, very busy working population, you know, very little spare time, and people constantly moving from one tube stations to the other. So you know, captured the products on a video wall, and all you had to scan the QR code, and straight it goes into the cart. You pay for it, and it all got home delivered later. In fact, Tesco, although they entered the market very late and was behind the market leader, made a stunning job of retailing in South Korea and soon became market leaders. Of course, now that business is getting sold out, but with a lot of profitability. In India, the home shop guys did something like that in the Delhi terminal. You know, they had the TV shopping, and concurrently same products would be available on a video wall on which you could place orders and have it home delivered. I think the main point is all these innovations work brilliantly, and although the dwell time is low, it's really high quality time. Yeah, I mean, I've never felt short of time there. I mean, although we all have that 1 hour typically to spare, so it's really high quality time and very successful, very amenable to such innovations.
One point for you, Yash. Do you see vending machines playing a role for your category?
Why not? I mean, have you all noticed that Apple products are now sold on vending machines in airports? So anything can be sold in vending machines. You can get food on vending machines in Japan. So I think more and more seamless, cost of labor is very high, which Himanshu might want to touch upon later. But I had a very interesting example to sort of lead from Shankar's point. For example, Changi Airport does the same thing using virtual data. In Changi Airport, if a certain product is out of stock, you can still purchase it, get the tax-free advantages, and have it delivered to your home. This is also useful for liquor, where you do not want to sort of go through customs. But increasingly, we are seeing the blend of, you could say, e-commerce or a virtual shopping environment in airport. But still, these are early days, Himanshu. It is very early days. The cost of travel retail is so expensive that brands feel that it is better to invest in the physical product.
Is data download is very high in probably at the airport, because that's the time you have some time and you're just actually using your mobile systems to download some stuff or read emails on the others. So it's also becoming a very important customized thing. If you use the airport Wi-Fi, sometimes sponsored by a company, is data download, which is available. It comes with an offer. So they're also using this channel to promote products and offers and services as well. We've seen some internationally and looking to see if they can be implemented in India as well. So they're also using this more as an advantage as a technology platform to blend and catch the eye of the customer. So there may not be an immediate conversion, But it is also to just catch the eye of the consumer because, as I say, he's more focused at that time. He's got that 15 minutes. He has nothing else to do because he's waiting for his flight. Because there's now that other way he can engage and, he would just miss it.
That actually brings me to the next part, which is you said he's got 15 minutes or half an hour waiting for the flight. But that luxury is not there when you arrive at an airport, as in you from another airport to your destination. And that brings me to the question of, for a traveler who's in a hurry to leave the airport and go, how do you get the arrival retailing going? Everybody is struggling to get the arrival retailing going. How do you make that happen? Is there a possibility, or arrival retailing will continue to be like this?
So internationally, it is difficult, and liquor companies have been one of the only few to take advantage of the difference in pricing. Domestically, it's a very difficult environment. Some discount sellers, such as we might have heard of Ava, for example, is doing a fair job because it's a very difficult environment. And I think yesterday, Alok put it very succinctly in his presentation that when you want to convert, discounts are a great way to sort of influence consumers. So the consumer who lands, he has possibly not even 15 minutes, maybe 3 minutes by the time his Uber comes to go to his office, to his loved ones. So I think you can only attract the consumer by either a very steep discount, a great deal, or you need to really think about getting into the mind of the consumer. So both internationally and domestic, for now, use the relative price differences, such as with alcohol internationally or with deep discounts domestically. Other than that, any thoughts? What else can we do to sort of get a larger share of the consumer's wallet?
So we've seen that there is what we call the concept, particularly in the airports, is meters and greeters. So what happens is, if we plan the, and that's where probably you can add more, is you plan the retail environment wherein the person who's coming to somebody to receive it. So there's probably somebody from your family, from your office, or some client you're going to pick up, and there is typically about a 15-minute or half an hour, and you create a retail environment which is accessible for people who are coming from, who are waiting outside as well. There is a huge amount of opportunity to do that, which obviously F&B in some airports has been able to do it successfully. But I think there is still an opportunity to do that, and we experimented with it, and there could be a lot more services which could be done. So also, for example, a salon is when you're coming out, you take an early morning flight, you want to just refresh yourself, you want to just get a quick haircut or a shave, or just something like that, you just get groomed yourself before you get in for the important meeting. It's something which those kind of services sector, and also something which is for the meters and greeters when they're waiting for you to come out for that about 15-minute to half an hour window. If they can be planned where it is not accessible only for the traveler, but it's the people who are sitting outside or waiting outside, also create an environment for it, can be done. That's something which we've seen. There is some amount of interest level, and there is opportunity there, but it's not yet been capitalized.
Zubin, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, oh dear, sorry, that's a bit too loud. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think there's a capture for people waiting just as there are for people arriving and leaving the airport. And of course, most of us just want to get in and out, right? We're not going to hang around. We're different that way. But I think certainly coming out, you can drive and plan your retail around leaving immigration. And it happens both at arrivals and departures. In Heathrow, they do that very successfully in terms of driving people through retail shops. And we see that at the Bombay airport as well. And I think if there's any point of sale, it's going to be then, I think as well, it has to be the right sort of product. It can't be crowded. You can't feel as though you're in a shop. So where you have to protect your goods and offer, it has to be focused as well. And yes, we all like discounts. I know Indians like discounts. Everyone likes a discount, let's face it. So certainly if we can offer the right price point as well, I think it'll definitely increase sales.
My next one is to Atul and Shankar. As the airports get better and better, and I have an observation, and maybe it is wrong and you can correct me on that count, is that the international brands, so let's say Boots over Apollo Pharmacy, yeah, let's say WH Smith over Crossword or Landmark, Starbucks over cafe coffee day. Yeah? Do you see this trend taking place? Are you going to be knocked off or not even get a chance to get into those? And how are you going to pitch yourself?
Okay, I think when we address Apollo to Boots, just to be very specific, I think there is a history behind the domestic purchase pattern also. So if you look at a typical Indian pharmacy environment and domestic market also, 65 to 70, or maybe even 70% of the sales still comes from the medicines, and 30% comes from the so-called non-medicines. So somehow that gets replicated in, because the customer is the same, the consumer is the same, the buying habits are the same. It is just that that's a sixth continent as we've been talking about. Whereas in a developed market like UK where Boots operate, it's vice versa. So there the buying habit, I'll give you an example when you mentioned about Boots. Boots is probably the largest, that's what I've been given to understand, the largest seller of sandwiches in UK, and people just flock around to Boots to buy a sandwich. I don't know how many of us would be interested in buying a sandwich from a pharmacy, Dawai ki dukaan, in the afternoon. So there are certain cultural differences. But
can I just, it can be instead of Boots, you can take Guardian as the example. Guardian Pharmacy as the example.
Okay, no, but again, we can get into that. But the bigger point I want to make out here is, I think we are moving towards that now, wherein the pharmacy store per se is being looked upon as a wellness store. Most of us, and that's what the strategic intention of all the big players like us is, that I don't want somebody to just remember me once he's full. So as that preposition of a retail moves from pharmacy to a wellness store, the same would get replicated in a airport retails, railway stations, wherein people would be flocking to me not just for medicines but for all the wellness products. Health and beauty is what we call that segment is. So definitely we see that trend happening. What pace, maybe I won't be able to answer at this point of time.
No, my question actually was, and you're right on that count. My question was the airport, whether it is the aggregator or the airport itself making that choice. Do you see this progressively happening, that let's say a W.S. Smith will take precedence over a Crossword or a Landmark, or alternatively, for example, your category, a Guardian or a Boots would take precedence? And my question was not if it is so, what exactly will you do to pitch for our understanding? And it is not about Apollo per se, but what should the Indian brands do to pitch against these and win the space there?
I think my mitigation to that challenge would be more on the assortment side. And as I mentioned about nutraceutical supplements, that's one way of doing it. Other way is more on addressing a product side which is purely impulsive in nature. And I'll give you very quick examples. We never thought that diapers and baby food would be a big category in the airport. And when we started doing it, initially we realized that all the mothers, though they carry 2, 3, 4 diapers, but they're always scared that they need 5 more, 10 more. So I think it would be more around the product assortment, a premium product assortment, because I'm assured of a customer base who is much more well-traveled, well-educated, have that kind of buying capacity. And third, in that, what we have realized is that if we are able to engage, because brand is all about engagement with the consumer. And we have realized that somebody wearing a white coat of Apollo, when he engages with the customer, somehow the service level bars goes a little up. And I think these are the 3 pillars against which I can mitigate the challenge.
Yeah, I understood the question, I mean, Indian retailers versus foreign retailers. The challenge is no different from what it is in a mall. I mean, we've seen it in many malls in Delhi. There has been churns, on the basis of who the mall operator thinks will have a better chance of success in terms of bringing in walk-ins. So the challenge is not going to be any different. I mean, it's more a business challenge. You have to worry about being relevant outside, which is a larger chunk. And it's the same in the airport as well. But if anything, you have a better chance in the airport retail, because the system forces you to be very selective in your assortment, smaller space. Inherently, you have to do better. I think in some ways, you're better prepared to handle a situation like this in airport retail than versus what it is outside. So, but it's a larger business challenge, not anything restricted just to airport retailing.
Interesting. I'm not asking you this because the question would have been Cross versus Parker, but we're not going to go down that path. But coming back to another interesting aspect in airport retailing, which is not seen by customers, is that there is the role of the aggregators who play a significant role in multiple categories and increasingly so. From each of your perspectives, maybe we'll start with Pankaj and each of the brands, and Zubin can add. Bane or boon? Great thing to have aggregators, or from your own perspective, or is it a disastrous thing to have aggregators in between?
Mancha, I wish there was a clear-cut answer to that. Both have the opportunities of a pitfall, and there's an opportunity as well. From a airport or even a metro operator, for that matter, to give it to one company as an aggregator to take over the entire role, it reduces the headache, and they have to put in back-end operations and full-fledged teams to manage and run that. So it makes their life much more easier. But what happens is, we've seen practically on the ground is, their hands tends to be with the aggregator. There tends to be the pain points which come in that they would want, where they maximize their revenue without and compromising the customer's feedback or the customer's what the needs are. So they may want to go with a coffee chain which they have a tie-up with, or they get better margins with, whereas a customer preference may be for another coffee chain for that matter. Or they might just give a restrictive saying they'll have only one coffee chain to protect the area of interest as well. So those kind of issues come up with that. I think the blend of the two works. We've seen that aggregators work internationally as well, but it leaves the door open for a lot more to be done. Because see, retail around the travel corridors, whether it's airports or metros, is really more looked at as a convenience for the customers who are coming and utilizing that platform. So it should not be looked at as purely being a real estate play. And unfortunately, in India, we still look at it as a pure play real estate, and saying how do we maximize the operator looks the operator of the metro or the airport looks at it saying how do I maximize value to make money, because they got a 35 or 40-year window to maximize real estate and make money out of that as well. So they look at maximizing. The operator comes in because he's already paid a huge amount of money to come into the system as aggregator. He wants to maximize value as well. And what gets compromised is the customer per se, because he's forced to go out and only drink the coffee which is available, and he doesn't have another option, or he has to drink that beer only which is available per se. So you lose out a whole customer experience per se as well. And if you go to international airports, in particular in Europe, there are multiple formats. There are the Starbucks of the world. There is a local company also, which is probably unbranded, not heard of, or is very local to that market, is also selling coffee and sandwiches and the others. And there could be differentiation in terms of product, in terms of pricing. It could be even segregation of what they can each sell so they don't cannibalize on each other. But so you have to make a blend. So when the process of getting an aggregator it needs to be well defined in saying this is something which you can do, and these are some of the don'ts. So if those clear those, then the model, a blend will work better than one simple answer on that.
Atul, you love dealing with the aggregators?
Our experience is very limited as far as the aggregator scene is concerned, because most of us are on the standalone store. But I think that way the blessing in disguise for us is that since we work in a very, very highly regulated and regulated environment, so we haven't seen much pitch of that as far as pharmacy space is concerned.
Wonderful. Yash, you must be loving dealing with the aggregators, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in fact, Pankaj comes from a very realtor perspective, and they dislike anyone else who takes a bit of the margin. But as a brand, we love businesses, aggregators, operators who make life simple for us. Airports can be a very difficult environment to work in with so much of taxation issues, logistics issues, certification issues. You often need a partner who can sort of cut through all that clutter and make the process seamless for you. One big reason, in fact, I would like to say, Himanshu, why global travel retail has taken off is because of the aggregators or operators, as often they're known. They do take a large margin, but they make it so simple. For example, if you're dealing with DFS, they have operations in 80 countries. You have a single point window to sort of discuss. Yes, they will take 65%, but you will get distribution across the globe. In India, operators are still yet to graduate to the level of excellence and expertise of international operators. But once that happens, more brands can come in. It is easier for them to sort of manage through the tougher Indian certification systems. You must remember that you have separate labeling criteria, taxation criteria. It's very difficult. And a great way, touching on onto what Atul was mentioning earlier, a great way to really unlock the potential of railways, bus stations, etc., would be to have operators there. If you have a good operator who can take care of, say, for example, Southeastern Railway, then automatically as a brand for us, it is easier to enter because you have a single window. He will take his margin, but he will provide a high level of service for that operation. So yes, all for operators.
Shankar, do you have any experience with the operators?
No, not really. We're a large format, so we've been able to get that directly. But I appreciate what Yash just said. Yeah, I mean, there is that easy entry and well managed because there are logistics issues in airports.
Zubin, from the design perspective, if an aggregator comes in, he would want his own design language, space and design language. How does it impact the overall layouting and designing that you do?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the successful diagram or planning of any retail center is in its flexibility. And there has to be flexibility in the diagram. And the more simple and clear this diagram is, the greater flexibility there is for allowing operators at various stages of the design process to come in and listen to the people, to the tenants and the people who want to take the spaces up. It's fundamental. It's fundamental. I think a well-operated and well-managed center is fundamental on many levels, you know, from, be it something as complicated as an airport or a train station, even a large-scale train station. The synergy between all these things is incredible, you know, in terms of all the things we talked about, footfall, you get the pricing right, you get the mix right. You know, it's incredible the sort of thing you can create. But I think we haven't quite harnessed that potential yet. You know, we think of a retail as an enclosed street. You know, I don't want to harp back on it. But I think if we can just think about these things differently, open them up, create public squares. You know, I'm quite old-fashioned, and it kind of goes back again to, you know, the idea of technology and touchscreens. And we've done that. We've all played with clients who've wanted that sort of thing. And, you know, they can work in strategic places. But, you know, I think if it's kind of everywhere, you're overwhelmed. We're overwhelmed anyway in the world. You know, we have so many people running around us, particularly in Asia with the populations. And, you know, in transport-oriented developments, you want to go from A to B generally most of the time. So it's finding a way to get people to stay, you know. And why are they going to stay? They're going to stay if you create public squares, public spaces, friendly pedestrian streets, which enhances, you know, communication and socialization. And I think if we get that right, we sort of tick boxes on many other levels. It's all related. I think you can't look at the micro without looking at the macro, and that's fundamental in terms of a successful mixed-use development.
Very interesting. Yeah, sure.
You know, there is, probably you can add in that one, there is a station called the Broadgate Station in London, where there was a high-quality A-grade office development on top of it, and which had offices of all the big investment banks like Lehman, Warburg Pincus, Goldman Sachs, and the others. But we've not seen that in India. So, you know, from that perspective, if you look at it, like stations become conduits for developing high quality real estate as well. In India, when you say next to a metro station in India or a railway station, it's looked at like grade B or grade C straight away itself. You know, the perception goes, oh, it'll be like average. Whereas internationally, we look at it, the stations really become the epicenter of business and economic activity. Whether it's for retailing, you go to Singapore, the metro is integrated into the mall itself. So really the customer gets out from the metro station, goes up into the mall, shops, and comes down. and he doesn't really even see the street. But in India, we've not seen, we've developed a huge amount of metro corridors, we're developing in every other city, we've not seen even one high quality development coming in as well. So if really from a travel retail, or if you look at it from real estate, which is also getting developed along with these travel corridors, we've not we've not harness the opportunity which is available. So I think there is a huge amount of opportunity to develop, and automatically there is a demand. There is no reason why a churchgate station in Mumbai cannot get developed into alongside a very high quality office development market, or a shopping mall for that matter. So automatically, along with the need for travel retail will automatically get developed also alongside, because the customers will either work upstairs, use it as a transit, shop, and then go out. So I think there's a big opportunity which has not been harnessed in our country on that lines as well.
And I think this integration of public transport with malls, etc. We have seen other examples like Westfield in London again, so beautifully integrated with all modes of transport. But that brings me, before we go into the Q&A session, is with each of you, starting from that corner, any interesting personal anecdote related to airport or railway station retailing or highway retailing?
Well, on the railway side, I think we are quite bullish because that's where we look upon ourselves not just as a retailer to sell products, but we are a service provider, and I think that's one key area we are looking at.
Shankar, any interesting anecdote that you can narrate?
I mean, personally, for me, it's a great place to shop. Although the dwell time is low, it's really high quality, undisturbed, and it's like, being given a target and complete it as quickly as possible. So I enjoy my shopping there. I mean, most of the time we are alone, very, very focused, targeted. So I do a plenty of shopping for myself and for gifting, So personally, in general, I don't like shopping too much, but airport, no problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I belong to the same boat as Shankar. I think many of us are business travelers, no times for families, etc. So I travel 20 days a month, but my wife has still not left me. I think singularly because of airport shopping. I've bought her almost everything available. For example, Emirates launched a Buckley I Love You bracelet, I bought that. Then Indigo launched a gold rose, I bought that. So she feels that I'm a really nice husband, but I subsist on airport shopping. My kids sort of survive on airport shopping as well. So really it is a very uniquely personal environment, and it's the only time people are alone with their thoughts. They are open. They can, it's a great way to get into their wallet and sort of make the maximum use of it. So yes, airport shopping is here to stay and to be quite well.
No specific thing. I've not been shopping that much for my wife. I don't do travel that much. But I think just a leaving comment is that I don't think we utilize the potential of Indian opportunity, particularly when you have a very focused audience available who's got a discerning customer, who's got ability to spend. And I personally feel more than airport, I think the biggest opportunity is metro stations in India, which is huge because every big city is talking about metro, right from Jaipur to Ahmedabad to Mumbai and Bangalore and Hyderabad. I think there's still a huge amount of opportunity which we not utilized to capture that customer mindset. And it can really change the way how the customer demographics change, and the ability to spend is there. Where you open the opportunity, people will spend. I think we're still struggling and saying high street versus malls. We're not looking at the next wave of customer and saying, what do we make him right where he is? Can we actually create opportunity for retail for him there?
Yeah, I guess anecdote, I got suckered into buying a Cross wallet, actually. Where's Mr. Cross, one of these guys? Yeah, no, I'm not. It was on an Air India flight, you get those voucher things, I got, and normally I wouldn't even look at it, but it was in my food tray. I scratched it, and I was a winner. I had to pay the 1,000 rupee tax though. But yeah, I bought the Cross wallet,
Thank you, everyone. And now we shall have the Q&A session. My request is that with your question, if you can name the panelist who you are addressing the question to.
Good morning, everyone. This is Arun here from Vardhaman. See, I was just going through the discussion, what was happening, and there was this thing that was crossing my mind that we have been talking a lot about retail at the airport, retail at the station, but as in data, if we just go through the regional traffic that follows, I mean, there's only 5% that goes through the airport and 60% that goes through the railway. But there is a huge traffic that flows from the ISBTs, what we call, interstate bus terminus. And the opportunities available there is huge. And we have not even, spoken about that, what in terms of retail, the opportunity available at those. Because as personally, if I have to travel, from Chennai to Hyderabad, I would, Chennai to Bangalore, I would definitely take a bus, a Volvo, rather than going to airport and wasting, 4 to 5 hours. So within 6 hours, with the Majestic, I'm there at Chennai. So that is a touch point in terms of regional traffic, which is a huge potential in terms of the clientele available, and every day it is like day traffic is moving. So this is something which I would like to have. This question is not for any specific, but to everyone is that how we are taking that as in terms of retail, traffic retail altogether.
I can take that. So. As consultants and advisors, we've advised a lot of ISBT terminals, both from developers who've taken it over and the government as well. And we've seen that the offtake has been very limited. And there have been actually live projects which exist today as well, which have ISBTs. The government has actually been forward and looked at and saying, can we develop these as international class terminals for buses, and we've seen this come up in Mohali, we've seen it in Shimla, we've seen this in many other cities as well. Unfortunately, it's not given the feedback what we got from the ground after they got implemented was not very exciting. Probably the pyramid of, if you look at from a consumer stand, is the topmost quality customer is traveling by air. Then the next level of customer is really traveling by train or self-transport by a car or the others. And then the third rung of the customer is by the travel, by the experience by buses. And if you look at it, the majority of the bus network is really the state transport corporations who are running these. And the facilities which they provide and the amount of people which visit it is very mass. So what happens is the traffic which the ISBT terminals, what they vision to develop on the international ways, it's not the same experience which you can, because the customer who's coming in, is profiling of the customer is not yet graduated to shopping beyond buying a more like a dhaba kind of a place or a canteen kind of a place to pick up some tea and coffee and some like a bread pakoda or a samosa or something like that, or some basic stuff. So there's not value-added retail which has really moved in there. And we also looked at in saying, because more of these ISBTs tend to be now in city centers because where the cities have developed, and can we use that as a traffic flow to develop these as offices or retail centers for the consumers or people who live around, because it becomes a very focal point of that. Because of the congestion levels of these buses and the others, the customer is not willing to come in. So really, I think if you were to develop from a travel retail perspective, I think the bigger opportunity still remains is develop the airports. The railways will be the next big one, and I think the road transport will become later. Nevertheless, the road transport, there'll be an opportunity wherein if it is highway retail, so where there is a transport nodal system which is going to be, say, the breakaway point, wherein saying it's the resting point or where the buses stop for conveniences for people to get down and the others, that could be more of an aggregator and develop some more retail. But we've seen that ISBTs have not really worked very well. It has not worked for the developers who built these commercial complexes on top of it. Neither has really generated a lot of revenue for the government as well.
So just to add to Pankaj's point, I sort of agree with him that it is airports, rail, followed by roads. But there's a very interesting example. For example, in Italy, if you travel by road, it's a wonderful experience. I mean, obviously it's Italy. But still, what they've done is that they've outsourced the entire chain of modern trade along the highway to an operator. And it's a very high quality offering, a very accessible pricing offering for food. There's a mini supermarket, there's a play area for children, free Wi-Fi, bathrooms, so on and so forth. So the idea is that if you can get in an operator who provides obviously a very accessible pricing range of services as the road network improves, maybe on certain expressways or certain better roads, you can get a very high quality level of services where brands, where businesses do not have to directly engage with every single bus stop or every single zone where you have an operator or a nodal agency managing it. So that could be one answer of getting an agency who has the contract to open modern trade along a certain highway.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, Aaron. I think there's great potential. And let's face it, if we're talking about infrastructure, most of it is road, isn't it? You know, and it's getting improved and vamped all the time in India. I think what we should be doing is looking at not who who uses the road or what sort of clientele, we're servicing in terms of a potential development, but how to integrate sophisticated infrastructure, as well as safe travel for cyclists and pedestrians to create a special destination, and then build density around an infrastructure offer. It might be a BRT, okay? And if it's a significant station, you create diversity in the offer. Again, like I said, diversity in land use and population. Get these people of different revenue streams together. Create a mixed-use, vibrant area where different people with different spending powers can come together. And it's all in the mix. It's diversity and variety, that creates sales and creates vibrant communities. And it's vibrant communities that we should be creating. Not thinking of the end lines, which are the big rail metros or the airport, but it's stuff in the middle. You've got to get that right. And you've got to get that right on a regional level. Identify your nodes, create development around the nodes, and then between the connecting corridors, create an offer that's viable, sustainable, and tenable.
Thank you, Zubin. Can we have the next question, please? We have time for maybe a couple of more, and maybe one panelist can answer whichever one you select. Yeah, in the blue shirt.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nishit Shah. My question is that for a new retailer into travel retailing, how can it be, make very simple in terms of, is there any kind of association of travel retailers who are having a forum or maybe having a kind of body who can help the new retailers who want to come into travel retailing? Because there are several, challenges for a new retailer coming into travel retailing, as mentioned very much by the Yash sir also, that on airports there are several things need to be addressed, paperworks are to be done. It has to be also taken care for a small retailers about the pricing and having the same image all over in the all three slabs. Means maybe if it is a railway station or a bus stop, there the outlet needs to be little bit on a lower side, but at airport it has to be invested more. Still also compromising with the MRPs, because one cannot charge over and above the MRP, but still he has to manage within those circumstances. So means...
Got your question. In the interest of time, I'll answer that for you. The body that we all are a part of is called Retailers Association of India. They have expertise across different segments. They do a lot of patching up work in case you are a member of Retailers Association of India. So my request is that there is no specific body which will help you in all that you are saying. Your best bet is to enroll yourself into Retailers Association of India and request them to put you in touch with the relevant people. Yeah.
I'll just sort of mention the international agency also which does that. There are two agencies. One is TFWA, Tax Free World Association, and there is IAADFS, which is Duty Free Show of the Americas. Through that, you can get in touch with operators who will make your life easier. So, but these two associations can sort of take care of it.
Thanks. Next question, please. Yeah.
I have the mic.
Oh, you have a mic?
My name is Ravi. I have a question actually. The Agra Expressway, from Delhi there's an expressway to Agra. It's a brilliant expressway with about 500 rupees plus toll actually. But there's nothing on either side, and the kind of people who travel, the kind of cars which go through is like totally premium cars. How come all these can be converted into a better shopping experience? I don't know, is there something wrong with the models, or, there's absolutely no restaurant, there's no shopping, nothing at all.
Pankaj?
Yeah. So
I think that really depends on the operator because I've traveled on the expressway a couple of times. There is definitely a stopway, probably half point on both the sides. There is, but it's a very, very basic, more like a canteen kind of a place with basic food and services and averagely maintained toilets. Whereas you're talking about the most well-traveled from a foreign expatriates who come in into India from a tourist perspective who use that. I think it's just because of the operators not really taking, making an effort to put in high quality services there, and there's definitely a need for it. And that's where the gap comes in, is because you tend to build a great expressway, but you forget about conveniences which you want to do. And that's where the challenge comes in India as well, because they want to look at saying, the guy who pays me the maximum value, I'll give him exclusivity to that operator to run that one shop on, or the one restaurant, cafe kind of a thing on the road. So probably just that's because only the reason.
Thank you all for all the panelists here, and thank you audience everyone for the questions and for taking interest in our panel. Thank you so much.